The subject of today is what a wonderful world. And can you see that? What a wonderful world, can you see it? And try and listen to this for inspiration and contemplation and not for debating. So just listen and take in what makes sense. And if something doesn't make sense, you can ask questions in the end, and we could talk about it there. So, but try and listen for what is there for you to get in this talk about a world, a wonderful world, and how that makes a difference in how we also want to, when we want to make changes in the world, how we come different to that when we're in touch with the beauty and wonder of our world. So the world I'm talking about, it's both the environmental world, like the physical world, our Mother Earth that we're living on, and like that kind of world. I'm also talking about our social worlds, so our societies, our families, how we get along with each other, how we don't get along with each other within a society and across borders. So both the human world, the social world of humans, and also the natural world of our environment that we inhabit, and that we are part of, that we are like really need to get in touch with, that we are part of that environment and part of it. But first I'll speak a little bit about my background for doing this, and from there I'll ease us into the points that I'd like to make about why it's really important for us to be in touch with the wonder, the beauty of both our environmental world, but also of our social worlds and our networks. Somewhere between 15 and 20 years ago, I was kind of hit with a line that was a world of our choice, and it felt much like it came to me, and it seemed in some way really huge, and I had no clue what to do with it at that point. So I kind of put it on the shelf and just let it stay there. And once in a while I'd kind of remember and bring it out again from the shelf and be inspired, like feeling this inspiration from a world of our choice, a world that works for everybody. But I still didn't know what to do with it, so back on the shelf with it. And that's kind of how it's been for many years. It's been in and out of the shelf, but I haven't really known what to do with it. And this webinar is part of now a Facebook group that is called A World of Our Choice. So this webinar is part of what how I unfold this A World of Our Choice, and how I'm offering it now to the world. I think A World of Our Choice also came out of a kind of despair with how the world was functioning. I was really aware of how people don't treat each other well, and how the environment is suffering, and so it came out of that frustration that there's another possibility. There's something else we could do with this place and what we're doing presently, and also what we were doing 15, 20 years ago when I got the idea first. But I also only recently have really realized how I've been living in a state of perpetual hopelessness about the state of the world, a state of overwhelm, and like seeing all the problems in the world and feeling so small and insignificant in doing anything about it. Like, who am I? One person. What can I do? And that overwhelm and that hopelessness and that just seeing how massive changes we really need to make, and just feeling, oh, it's only me, which it of course isn't, but that's kind of what I was living into. That hopelessness and that overwhelm kept me out of action. I supported some NGOs and like some causes that I find do good in the world. So I have done a little, but I still kind of was living with this overwhelm and hopelessness for the world, and not seeing how I could matter in that. And that is really also what I want to, that is what I want to wake people up from, that we don't matter in the big picture, because it's all the little dots of human beings that come together, matters, and create and make up this world we're living in. So that's really part of what I want with this, also this Facebook group, this A World of Our Choice, is to help people get out of overwhelm and hopelessness and get into action, to the possibility and the kind of world that would be wondrous to live in, that we would all thrive in, and that also the environment would thrive in, so that we can thrive with it, because without our environment we can't thrive either. What I was living into was that there was something wrong with the world, there was something broken in the world, there was something that really needed fixing in the world. Also, it's too big a task. And then of course that I can't, I'm just one person, what can I do? And people don't care. And that is kind of noticing the people who don't care, who don't pay much attention to taking care of the environment or taking care of other people. But then at the same time, completely having these blinders on, so that I didn't see like all the people who are working for the environment, and all the people who are every day, and most of us treating each other respectfully, kindly, or just politely, but we are all co-creating that, and most people behave decently most of the time, but I wasn't seeing that. I was kind of overwhelmed with the input from people, or about people who mistreated others and abused others and stuff like that. And there comes a lot of unhappiness, of course, with thinking and believing in that way. And again, kind of keeping me subdued and out of the game, not even trying very hard. I can donate some money, that's what I can do. I can do something about my own shopping, that's what I can do. And that's like great places to start, obviously. They're very close to home. But I'm also seeing how this thinking that the world needs fixing and people don't really care is also a way of losing faith in each other as human beings, that we're not acknowledging that we're good natured, and that we want to be like spontaneously, most of the time we want to take care of each other, and only when we're really upset do we do something else. There are 2 or 3 turning points that came up for me. One was through mindfulness practice and other practices, really getting present with the beauty first of nature, with the beauty of the moment, and appreciating that. And actually during the pandemic, COVID, seeing how some societies actually handle the pandemic relatively well, and that in their people, COVID doesn't hit as hard, and other governments doesn't handle it as well, and their people are getting like way more sick, and the hospitals can't handle the pressure. But during the pandemic, seeing how so many people actually cooperate to, especially here in Denmark where I'm situated, how people are cooperating to align with government guidelines and try and keep the social distancing and remember the face masks and like all these things. And it kind of opened up that I saw how people, I was regaining faith in people, seeing how they work together to make things work. And how, like, we're doing that all the time. We're building houses, we're creating cities, we're trading, we are doing a lot of things together to try and create something valuable for ourselves and for each other. So it's kind of got the blinders off a bit during COVID. And also for a while I've been following another Danish initiative, which is called The World's Best News. Now they have a weekly newsletter in Danish, unfortunately not in English, but they do have an English homepage where you can get some of the best news. And I had gotten that newsletter for a while, so it's once a week, just getting what is happening well in the world. So they're kind of trying to counterbalance some other media's doom and gloom picture of the world, and they're doing it with facts. So they're saying factually this is happening positively in the world right now, and that is both environmentally, socially, and in all corners of the world. So both in richer countries and not so rich countries, where do we see some positive social change and environmental change? And just getting that again and again and again and again, and seeing how there are so many people who are already working for this world to work, and also really getting present with that so much has in fact happened. Like if you think back 100 years, people wouldn't know what happened in the other end of the world, and they wouldn't care. Like, they wouldn't care, and they wouldn't know what happens in the other end of the world. Today we know maybe way too much about what's happening in the other end of the world, or maybe not enough, whatever. But so we're getting this global awareness that has never existed before, and it's like it's only a moment ago in time, and different in different countries, but it's how many years since women got the right to vote, to have a proper education, to not have a male family member have to sign for her in the bank. Like it's a moment ago in time, but we got that freedom today that we didn't have before. And it's also just a moment in time since India got free and became their own nation. And it's only a moment in time, like also in America, that everybody, regardless of color, got the same rights. So as I was seeing these things, the vision of a world of our choice re-emerged, and I really felt like it came from a place where now I didn't see the world as needing fixing anymore, but from there are already so many good forces at work, people at work, to create a world worth living in, and also a world that can sustain us on, like, in the long haul, and trying to stop global warming and the other problems we're facing. So as I was getting this optimism, the idea of a world of our choice re-emerged, and I started getting ideas. As I took it seriously, I started getting ideas about how can I contribute? How can I what do I want to do with it? What impact would I like to make? And one of them is to wake up people who are where I were, who are kind of just overwhelmed and hopeless about the state of the world and not really taking seriously their own desire for a world that works for everybody and a sustainable world, and are kind of out of the game. So I really want to inspire those people and wake them up to the possibility of a world that works for everybody, and empower people to take action in whatever way feels right for them. So it's not like this is the action that should be taken, but more like really getting present with what is alive within that wants expression. As I was starting to ease myself into this project, I also still felt a little bit overwhelmed by the vision of it, or like what I wanted to do with it. And the other turning point I had was getting that it's not my project, that it's not something I'm doing, that I have to make happen, but that is kind of coming through me. Like there's something that wants through me and I don't even know quite why. But it's like the birds are singing their songs whether anybody listens to them or not. And this is my song and it's coming through. And as such is also in a way out of my hands, that I don't have to make things happen, but I let it express and then I see what wants to come into happening. And I'm a willing source for that. So this whole project is me singing my song and being my flavor of contribution to the world, hoping to inspire and ignite other people's singing and flavors of contribution to creating a world that works for everybody. What I've gotten really, really aware of is that we only attempt to create something we believe is possible. If we think something is utterly impossible, we won't really try for it. Like, why bother? So only when we believe it at least possible will we try for something, whether it be move to a different country to get another kind of job, or trying to get the spouse we want, or trying to climb a mountain, try to get to a spiritual level that we want, trying to get the kind of connection in our relationships that we want, and trying to turn around global warming, to save our environment so that we can keep living on this earth, creating peace on earth, finding ways for people to negotiate their differences and their wants and their needs, but also just their different viewpoints, and doing it in a way so that it doesn't lead to war. We will only attempt to create that if we believe it is at least possible. Not necessarily easy, not necessarily in the next 5 years, right? But if we don't even believe it's possible, we won't try for it. So I think it's so important that we really feel into what we want for the world and then start believing in it. Believe it as possible, and getting inspiration from when it was declared that America wanted to land on the moon. They didn't know it was possible, but now it was declared, it was said, this is the ambition, so we must make it possible. So that we believe in our own desires for the world strongly enough to go for them as if it was a moon landing. But also just that we begin seeing it as possible so that we can start going for it. Because as long as we don't see it as possible, we're not going to move. And so also seeing what is our beliefs about social change or environmental change that keeps us from being in action and from believing that it's possible to make those changes. So oftentimes if you watch the news, and again that can have different flavors in different countries, but a lot of the news, they go for the sensational story. Like there's nothing interesting in commonality. Like today, just like yesterday, so many cars arrived home safely. Not interesting. We want the car crash on the front of the newspaper. We want the sensation. We need to pique people's interest, and normality is not interesting. So the media can easily be a very one-sided horror story of the state of the world, and we really need to be awake to that, so that when we read about the car crash, we remember, okay, so there was one car crash and all the other cars came home safely. Okay, so there was one violent assault and we all get shocked about that, because the usual is that people can travel home safely and like nothing happens. So we really need to remember when we read those horror stories, that they are the break from the normalcy, and that the normal is that it's a pretty safe world. And I know I live in Denmark, that is a preciously safe place to live, and I know it's not equally safe everywhere in the world. But wouldn't it be wonderful if it was, right? So that we really remember that the media gives us a one-sided story, and we can even take the stories they are giving us, and then we can remind ourselves, so what is the full picture here? The full picture is the opposite of the story, and the normal, what's normal, so that we don't get so deflated or scared or horrified, hopeless, and just lived in this space where we're not very effective in doing things about what we want to see different in the world. If we're deflated, hopeless, overwhelmed, horrified, scared. Some people find a drive and come out from that space in a strong way, but most people just go into an emotional hiding and doesn't get anything done about these things. So we really need to remember that the media is not telling the true story or the full story, and that we can be impacted a lot as readers or viewers, and get emotional reactions from that are not really in sync with what we would want both to feel, but also not in line with what we would want to feel, so that we are our best to make the positive changes that we want to see in the world. So we really need to see both sides of I'm not saying the world doesn't have any problems. Obviously, I'm talking about changing the world, so I'm seeing there are things that I would like to see different in the world. But other than the problems, we also really need to see what is working well, so that we can see the full picture and actually come from reality and not come from imagination. Whether it be a horror story from the media or a fairy tale where we're denying there's anything wrong in the world, but that we can just see everything. We can be present with everything and say, okay, these things are going really great, and over here we have some problems, and let's do something about them. Let's solve it. Let's engage with it. Let's see if we can turn it around. Like we could. Wouldn't it be great if governments around the world looked to each other and said, what is best practice of government, and like where are there least school shootings in the world? What can we learn from these places if you are living in a country with school shootings? Where are there less poverty in the world? What can poverty-stricken countries learn? Maybe also what can poverty-stricken countries teach the rich countries, such as my country. Like, what are the inequalities that are keeping things in place? And how can the richer countries help levitate the imbalance, so that we don't have a world where in one corner of the world everybody is not only healthy but getting an epidemic of overweight people, and in other parts of the world people are dying from hunger. Like, that doesn't make sense at all. Like, really, it doesn't make sense. So how can we start seeing and learning from each other to create a more equal world for everybody? Is what I would love to see. When we're coming from reality and are not overwhelmed by media horror stories and the overwhelm of believing in a gloom and doom of the state of the world, we will feel more empowered, and we will have easier access to noticing, what do I really want to see in the world? What would I really like to see change? And it can be on the global scene. It can also be like in your own small community. It can, like, not even in a country. It can be just like your local area or your local town. Could even be within the family. This is something I want to see different in our family dynamics. But just like, what is calling you? So it is not like a brain decision of, now I'm seeing all the things in the world that I would like to see different, and then I'm trying to figure out which one do I engage with, but that you can sit back and really just feel into, what is your wanting? What is your, like, if you were a bird, what would be your song? And like, there are so many things that we can throw ourselves at or engaged with, and the overwhelm can come if then we think, but I can't engage with all of that. But we don't have to, because there are so many people in the world, and some people will do this and some people will do that. So just really listening into, where do I want to contribute? And it's not right or wrong to make that choice to contribute here and not there. It's just being really honest about where are you called? What is your song? And then go do that. And actually do that instead of being in overwhelm and get nothing done. And we really, really, really need to also get present with the fact that we're not alone. Like in my past thinking, I felt like I have a vision for the world and I'm the only one. And it's ridiculous, but that's how it was. And I think a lot of people is feeling the same kind of, it's only me, or it's all on me, or just feeling alone in it, because we're not really appreciating, we're not really seeing, we're not really acknowledging how many people are involved in creating change in our world today. From individual persons to NGOs, to governments, to businesses. Like, it's everywhere, and I can get impatient and want more faster, and maybe you can recognize that. But still, just really acknowledging there are many people trying to make this world, both environmentally and in our equality and economically, and how we people interact with each other, trying to make this place a better place for everyone to live. And we're not alone, and we're not supposed to do it all alone. But when we go together, we can do so much. And really remembering that is one of the powers of people, powers of human beings, is that when we go together, we can create way more than when we try to do it alone. So really regaining that faith in each other, and joining hands, reaching out, going for it. when we want to create some change in the world, it's also really important that we notice where we're coming from. Because it really, really, really matters, because where we're coming from determines also how we engage and what we are contributing with. Maybe not only the positive social change that we wanted to contribute with, but also with our mental states and our way of talking and all that. Let me come to it. So if we're coming from fear, like we're so scared about how the environment is going or how something in our social realms are going, we will bring that fear to the table, and our action will be coming from fear. We'll be talking fear, we'll be acting fear, and we won't be as effective in making the changes as if we're coming from clarity and from really just knowing what is it we want. When we're coming from outrage and anger, and that can be a starting point, but hopefully it evolves into clarity, because even if you want equal rights, if you're coming from anger, you're sharing anger and you're creating an angry environment, and in an angry environment people clash. So if you wanted equality and people having equal rights and having same opportunities, clashing in that way is probably counterproductive. And coming from clarity. Also, what is often lost when we get caught in our emotions and act from those is that we lose the clarity, and then suddenly we find ourselves debating things that are not really the core of the issue, and as such we may miss what's really at center stage, what really needs changing. I'm thinking about the Black Lives Matter movement, and I'm a little hesitant because there are so many emotions around that and so many opinions about that. Sometimes I find that in the frustration, and understandable frustration, of colored people in America not having the same rights and being maybe not seen as equal, sometimes the debate kind of came to center around like historical things that happened 200 years ago and their impact today, and it came to be about black people should have the same rights as white. Yes, but what about the conversation about just we want our police force to not kill our citizens, and obviously we don't want to kill them one-sidedly or way more often some groups than others. We want a police force that's actually taking care of us, and not that you're not scared when you're pulled over by a police car because you don't expect to be, like, you don't think you might be shot. Like, how is our police functioning? How are American police functioning? Of course, like, wanting to be treated equally, both in relationship to the law, obviously, but also just in interhuman connections. And some of these conversations, I feel like, fell a little under. It's really about that we are all equal, and we want a society that not just reflects it, but that is living that. And with history that may need some active and aware engagement to change like also just historically based thinking and economical, how people have had different starting points. But we really need to keep at center stage what we want. We want the equality. We want everyone to be respected, treated with respect, and that people should not fear being shot by police, especially when they're not criminals. Like, ordinary people shouldn't fear that, shouldn't have that fear. The police is there to protect and serve. So looking into those matters maybe a little bit more. We can also kind of feel the need for the world to change, and especially when we come from that fixing mode that I also came from. We want the world to change so that we can feel good. If we're coming from that place, we are out of touch with our power and how we actually matter for each other, and we're in suffering. Like, we are really wanting social change or environmental change to alleviate our feelings, and the two are just not connected, and it's not very effective. Not the least because some of the things we want to change in the world may not change in one person's lifetime. And I'm thinking about Martin Luther King, when he led the equal rights movement again in America. He didn't live to see the results of his engagement. So if he had led that fight for equal rights just so that he could feel good, so that he would feel better, that really wouldn't have worked. But he was fighting that fight because it was right. He came from this, like, the truth is, it's right to fight this fight. And he did it from that stance in himself. And he never got to see the most ultimate result of his fight and all the people that fought with him. He wasn't a one-man army, right? Many people who walked with him peacefully, creating the changes in America. That now America has had a colored president or black president, and I'm like, that is such a crown on his work that he never got to see, but we see it. And what we are engaging in wanting to change in the world, we might also not see the results of that, because it doesn't necessarily happen in our own lifetime. All the things we want to change, they're not going to happen in one lifetime. Like, well, could I believe that possible? Not really, but it would be nice. But like, that's just the impatience. So we really need to come from a place of clarity when we want to change the world, and want changes because we see it's right, and we see the truth of it, and because it wants forth through us. And listening to that life force expressing, or that impulse, and that possibilities opening up, when we get ideas of how to create change in the world. So that we look at ourselves when we want to change the world and say, am I coming from a place of reactivity? Or am I coming from a place of clarity? Because if I'm coming from reactivity, I am putting that out in the world and I'm contributing that. It creates just that reactivity also in others. And the changes we want to see may come way slower and will meet opposition, because oftentimes when one person is reactive, they get a reactivity back. So instead of moving things forward, like, it can feel really powerful to be angry, but it doesn't necessarily move things forward faster. On the other hand, coming from the clarity and standing in the truth of We're all human beings. We all have the same human rights. And if we don't have them, we should have them. Because it's right. Just because it's the truth of us. And it's right. And not compromising. So, some final questions you might want to ask yourself. Where do you see beauty and wonder in the world? And I'm just now realizing I feel like I've said way too little about that part. But just listening to yourself and feeling to yourself like, where in the world do you see and know and acknowledge beauty, wonder, love, for the human world at least? Where is it already present? Where do we already see it, experience it? And are you aware about the many, many different ways that the world has improved in the last 10 years, 20 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, 200 years? Like sometimes looking back can really set in perspective where we are today, instead of only looking forward and seeing where we would want us to be differently from where we are. Like, we live in the best of times when we're looking back. In some ways, and in other ways we are maybe not living in the best of times, but our world is so much richer and connected than ever before, and more people have rights, more children, and especially also more girls are going to school than ever before, globally. We are doing well. If you visit the A World of Our Choice Facebook group, I have links to this the world's best news, where you can also just explore their stories about how good things are going around the world. We need to hear that. We really need to get aware and present with all the good stuff that is happening in the world. Are you aware of all the people who are presently engaged in social work and environmental work and both formally and informally, just in how people are being with each other, who are making a positive impact in your local environment? What people around you can you appreciate for how they are engaging in their society, in their local area? And what in a more global and big scale are you aware of, that all around the world there are people working for the environment and working for human social skills and for societies to become better places for us to live in? And they are already better for many people. Our societies are already way better than they were 100 years ago. So really remembering that when we get impatient and want change to happen faster, that we have already come so far. Doesn't mean we shouldn't go further, just means we've already come so far. And what do we want to create now with all that's going on in the world? Yeah, so if you're thinking back, what do you know has improved in the last 10 years, in the last 20 years, in the last 50 years, in the last 100 years? What has improved in your country, in your region, in your society, in your social networks? What do you know has improved globally? And what do we have to be grateful for right now, in this moment? So if this is near and dear to you, please join the Facebook group, A World of Our Choice. And in the group you'll find resources, both within environmental change and social change, and how we can learn as human beings to look past our differences to the heart of the other human being, how we connect and conflict resolute. So different resources in that group, and this webinar will also be in the group, of course. And there's also a link to the world's best news, so you can look them up. It's great readings. It's really great readings, and I hope they'll create an English newsletter soon. So thank you for watching. I'll call it off for today, and I hope you've heard something that was useful and valuable for you.